listening to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher. Welcome to episode 2. Today we're interviewing Laurie Berkner, the queen of children's music. Of course, we'll be talking music, life in Manhattan and on the road, how to encourage your kids and their talents, but we'll also dive into anxiety. I send a questionnaire before I interview everybody, and one of the questions I ask is, what is the wish for your child? And her answer was that she grows up less anxious than I am. So we talk anxiety, what's behind it, and how we cope with it. But before we get there, here's the part where you like, follow, subscribe, do all the things. So remember to check out today'smama.com/podcast to check out past episodes, get the show notes, and of course, subscribe. If you subscribe to our email list, you'll not only get an email from us every week when we release a new episode, but you'll automatically be entered to win any and every contest we ever run. So like, we're giving away $1 million? ? You are entered to win. But like, we're not giving away $1 million ... yet. But we are giving away copies of our guest books. Like, we've got copies of Angela Santamaro's book, Preschool Clues, up for grabs, as well as our next guest, Laurie Berkner's new books, Monster, Boogie, and We Are Dinosaurs. We've also got some big giveaways just around the corner, so stay tuned. Again, you can find all of that on today'smama.com/podcast. Past episodes, the link to subscribe, and all of the blog post features that go with each episode. And now to the good stuff. On to the show. She's been called the undisputed queen of Kindie rock by USA Today. People magazine calls her the queen of children's music, and the New York Times said that she is the Adele of the preschool music crowd. A big welcome to Laurie Berkner on this episode of the Today's Mama podcast, hosted by me, Rachel Hersher. Laurie, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
You are like the voice of my children's childhood. So I actually got really nervous before I logged in today. So I have to tell you this. I was at a neighborhood swim party the other day, poolside with a bunch of moms, a billion kids in a pool. And people were asking me about what I've been working on. And I was talking about this new podcast we've been doing. And I mentioned that I'd be interviewing you this week. And I seriously started to laugh because it took about 5 seconds before all the moms started singing the Goldfish song and We Are Dinosaurs. So you truly are famous among all women and children. Okay, so to that same crowd of women, I mentioned that you live in Manhattan, and jaws dropped. Everyone expected you to be living on a farm somewhere or a commune. So the last place you were expected to be living was New York City. Tell us about life in Manhattan.
It's good. It's such a mix. It's funny because I think if I weren't here, I would be on a farm or a commune somewhere. I kind of actually feel like I am in some ways. If you live in an apartment building, it's not that different. Like, I go down in my bare feet and take care of our neighbors' cats, and their daughter goes to school with my daughter, and we vacation with people. It's just like everybody knows each other in the building and around the block and around the neighborhood. And but there is certainly a difference in that it's, we're not surrounded by, I don't know, agriculture.
Yeah.
So, but
you're not sitting in the middle of corn stalks making your music.
No, I was just saying there's a lot of drilling going on outside my window right now. And even though I'm on the 15th floor, I can still hear it. But, I love being here. It's funny, when I was a kid, I just dreamed of moving to New York City. That's all I ever wanted to do. And now I've been here for about 20 years, and I definitely, there are wonderful things about not being here as well. But we're here for now, and I love so many things about it.
Yeah, I have a romantic view of New York City. I think I could live there, but when I actually travel there, for vacation or business, my time limit's about 4 days before I'm like, all right, I got to get out.
It's very different to visit than to live here. Like I don't live anywhere near Times Square. You know, we have a park a half a block from my house that runs like 40 blocks long along the river. And so it's hard to understand what it's like to live here, I think, unless you do, because when you come as someone who's just visiting, you're seeing a lot of things that are usually very crowded, very I don't know, maybe you don't see that, but that's what it tends to be, that a lot of people's experiences, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think the vision is a little overwhelmed, but I've also seen some of those neighborhood sites which are actually so charming and kind of like the movies too. So I do think there's some magic in Manhattan.
Agreed.
Now you've got a daughter. So the thought of raising kids in New York City has always blown my mind. Describe life with a child in Manhattan, because I mean, it seems like for how long you've been there, she was born there and kind of raised. So, those logistics, how has that evolved?
Yeah, she's definitely born here.
Yeah.
Definitely. There are some things that are hard. Like when she first was born, she was born in September, and then she was an infant through a winter. And I just remember basically not wanting to go more than 2 blocks from our apartment because we had a car, but it wasn't like, you don't take a car somewhere in Manhattan because then you have to park it, right? So it's usually something that we use to leave the city. So I found myself like, I can't really get in a taxi because I couldn't buckle her into a infant seat after she was 3 months old, and because she didn't have one like on her at all times, and buses were weird and subways were loud, and I just felt like I didn't go anywhere for a bunch of
Yeah.
months, and just waiting on the corner for like anything. It was so cold, and I was wrapping up, and I thought, I am insane to live here. I'm totally insane. And then like after those first 6 months, when I sort of figured out how to navigate the city, I realized, oh, there's actually a lot of easy ways to get around, and I can get a car seat for things, or we just kind of make do. And then she got old enough to be on a subway or be on a bus, and it actually became very easy because I didn't have to have a car everywhere I went, and there were so many kids around, and I could walk to the end of the block and be in what's where we live on the Upper West Side. They have these little toddler parks called tot lots, and I met people then who have had kids the same age as her that I keep running into now. Like someone just came to work at her school now that she's 13, and it was a mom that I was like, I met you in the tot lot 12 years ago.
Oh
She's
my
like,
gosh.
yeah, that I moved across to the east side for a while, now I'm back, and now I'm working at your daughter's school. I mean, it just like that happens. I can't even tell you how often that happens. So there's a lot of wonderful community here and a lot of support. It's also, now she's going to high school, I have to actually apply. We have to apply to
Mm.
high school, and there's like 400 of them. I mean, it's crazy. So some of those things are a real pain. And on the other hand, I hope she'll get a great education and like learn a lot living here, and she seems to love it.
Yeah. What is the age when you felt like I can send you out and about in this city on your own?
Yeah, she started walking to school by herself. I think she was 11. But we did that actually once, wasn't by herself. She would go with a friend. And so I guess around when she was 12, she started, maybe 11 and 12, she started taking buses and subways to after school classes on her own. But, it's amazing now because you can like look at the GPS. I could see where she is. Um,
Yeah.
I can I can sort of follow her. I can call her and be like, "Are you on the bus? Looks like you're on the bus. Oh, now you're crossing the park." So
I got you. I
yeah,
got you.
yeah. So there are ways to really stay connected, even when she's doing something that for her hopefully feels much more independent.
And I actually feel like I feel incredibly safe in New York. I feel safer in New York in the middle of the night than I do in San Francisco or, many other big cities. So in general, I do feel pretty safe about New York City.
Yeah, there are a lot of people around, and there's a lot going on, and most of the places that she would be, I also feel that way.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned we do a little questionnaire before our interviews, and you mentioned when we asked the question, what is your wish for your daughter? And you said that she finds whatever her passion is and is able to follow it, and that she grows up less anxious than I am. And I have to just say, can we talk anxiety for a minute?
Yes.
Because this is huge for people right now, young and old. Like, how does anxiety affect you?
It affects me a lot. I think about my own fight or flight mechanism, when a lot of people talk about the reason why we have all these stressful feelings are actually because when we first evolved, we really needed to protect ourselves, like from predators and things that were truly life threatening. And I feel like now I worry about, like, did I call the air conditioner guy? Like, is Lucy going to get to school on time? Did I finish my set list before the show? Like, I feel like these things that are not life or death become very important, and I want to do them well. I think it's been a lifelong battle. It's a lot of why I wrote a song called I'm Not Perfect many years ago, because trying to accept that, I think it helps a lot to reduce the anxiety. So I feel like I just have a lot more invested in things that maybe aren't as important as they feel physically to me. But I do end up trying to combat it with breathing and meditating and yoga and having fun, and trying to remind myself that, like, the point is to be having fun and living, right, and not worrying about it so much.
Yeah. And I have a daughter who I think she feels a little anxious sometimes, and we've looked into the same types of things like yoga and breathing and meditation, and those have even helped her a lot. She's like the same age as your daughter. We're kind of in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
And right now I think she thinks I'm less cool and funny than I think I am.
Welcome to my world.
Girl, I am like, one day you'll remember that I'm awesome, but like right now there's like a fog in front of your eyes. But I mean, actually looking at some of her thought processes has made me realize that I'm probably pretty anxious too. And I never really act it or acknowledge it. I have a lot of worst case scenario thinking. There are plenty of things that make me really anxious. And I think it is just like the plague upon us all.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I wonder about the fact that because there are many, many people who feel stressed who do not have life or death stress situations on a daily basis anymore. And yet we are kind of wired to be on the outlook for that all the time. It's almost like I sometimes feel like my body doesn't know what to do, because I've always been kind of a driven person. When I get excited about something, I dive into it and I do it. But I also have the other sides of me that just doesn't really want to do anything. And I think actually just that contrast of those two sides, that makes me anxious. Like, well, what if I just stop doing everything and fall into nothingness? Or what if I drive myself into the ground? I mean, I seem to be able to find many reasons to feel anxious, no matter which path I end up taking.
Yeah, I'm with you. And you just described a line of thinking that I have that I never realized that I'd had. That kind of like all or nothing bouncing back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is you're a performer and probably perform in front of the crowd that would make me the most anxious, which is toddlers and preschoolers. So the fact that even you struggle with anxiety, I find super interesting because that takes a lot of bravery.
It's funny because that part, well, it's not that it's easy. I think I feel like I have a wide range of people in the audience, right? It's not just the toddlers and preschoolers, like their parents are there too. And the parents are the ones who bought the tickets. So I really am there for the kids. But if the parents are not enjoying themselves, they're not as likely to come back, So
Yeah.
so there's sort of both of those things are kind of always in my mind. And I honestly feel nervous before every single show still, even though I've been doing this a very long time. And I don't necessarily feel that way once I've started, but usually there's like a few moments during the show where I'm like, oh, wait, how does that song go? Or whatever it is. I think I do find that performing is a time when I'm very present. And I think we can talk about meditating and things like that in the abstract, but really what that is a way to learn to be in the present moment, because anxiety, I think, is also about what's going to happen, what has happened, right? It's not what's happening right now necessarily most of the time. So, or maybe all the time. So I think that that's a very helpful place for me to be, is on a stage, because I can let go of some of that because I'm right in the middle of it. It's only when my mind starts to like jump ahead to the next song, and I have to really be conscious of that and be like, oh, I'm singing Victor Vito right now. Do not think about that new song that you don't remember the words to.
Well, and this is the part that blows my mind, is the whole, how on earth do you have that many songs memorized? And on stage, sometimes I walk out my front door and I see my neighbor who I've known for years, and I'm like, oh my gosh, why'd your first name just leave my brain?
But that same thing happens to me every single day. And I do actually sometimes forget words to songs I've been singing for 20 years while I'm on stage. But a lot of it is just muscle memory. I really depend on that a lot. Like how I don't remember the chords to songs that I have played over like literally hundreds of times. I have to sit down and physically touch the guitar in order to remember. So I think it's just a different kind of memorization.
Yeah. Now, how many songs have you written over time?
I'm not completely sure, but I think somewhere close to about 200.
It's insane. Like, I was fishing around iTunes and it's a lot for sure. Okay, so let's go back in time just a little bit. And I want to know where you actually grew up. And please tell me it was on a farm in the Midwest.
It was not.
I'm brokenhearted. A commune at least.
Nope. Oh my God. My
Shoot.
parents in a commune. That's like, I can't even imagine that. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I don't know. That's not my image of them. But although my mom is extremely people person. So, but I grew up in, when I was very young, Southern California. I was actually born in France, and just because my dad was working on his dissertation there. And so only till I was about 7, we lived in Southern California, and then we moved to New Jersey, and I stayed in Central Jersey, mostly in the Princeton area, until I went to college.
So you really are kind of an East Coast
Yeah,
girl.
I went to school at Rutgers College. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you speak French?
Un peu.
Yeah, I can sing you the alphabet. A, B, C, D.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. I'll do it together.
And then we made up like our own thing at the end, and it's horrible. J'ai répété mon alphabet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, that's not horrible. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's totally awesome. I mean, if you want to cut that on an album, I'm here for you.
I'm so down with that.
Well, and what's funny is because I was going through, I made like a Laurie Berkner Essentials playlist that I'm going to upload on our site, but I listened to Alouette, and your French accent was remarkable. And not that I'm a judge of French accents, but I mean, I felt like you really sold me.
Thank you. I remember going through school when I took French, and a lot of teachers would say, you have a really nice French accent. And I was like, that's because I was born there.
Yeah,
I heard it.
It just kind of jumped
That's
on
right.
me.
I heard it in utero.
You're listening to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher. We'll be back right after this.
For breakfast, you ate one stale goldfish you found in the car seat. Your hair is still sticky from last night's applesauce hands. You have to pick up dry cleaning, go to the store, unclog Mr. Fuzzy from the toilet, and then get the kids from school. You deserve something easy. Now you can automatically create 60-page photo books straight from your phone's camera roll and social media for just $10 with free shipping. Time flies. Hang on to every weird, wild moment with Chatbooks.
And now back to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher.
And this is actually the perfect transition to my next question for you. And so it's a question I ask every guest, and it's my very favorite. There's a scene in the movie Ratatouille, which is a French little Disney cartoon, where the food critic is transported back in time, and he's a really grouchy food critic. Have you seen Ratatouille?
I haven't. Okay.
That's okay. I'll give you this little background. So there's this really grouchy food critic, and in Ratatouille, their chef is an actual rat.
Right.
And so he's hiding back in the kitchen and he makes this dish and it comes out to this, surly food critic. And this critic is taken back in time because of a dish he ate. And it was the smell of it and the taste of it. And you watch this mental flashback where he becomes a little boy again, going home and smelling his mother's ratatouille. And so that was the smell or the taste of his childhood. And so I want to know, what is your ratatouille? What is your smell or the taste of your childhood? It's something that can hit you walking down the street, when you visit home. It could be a season of food, any sort of smell that takes you right back to being a kid.
Well, two things popped to mind. One was the smell of laundry detergent, like powdered detergent being run in a machine when you walk past a building and you smell that. It's like warm and smells like soap.
I love that smell.
I think of a lot, like when I would go down into our basement, and then I got older and I did the laundry. And that actually, this is kind of a weirdo thing, but like folding freshly laundered clothes is like one of my favorite things to do. I really love doing it. It's so weird. I will actually some days I'm like, I wish I just had an hour right now and I could fold laundry, because it's like very organizing for me and it feels clean and nice. I don't actually like putting away. I just like folding it and smelling it.
I'm with you. It's the putting away that's so bad.
So that's the smell. I was going to say the food that I remember was artichokes. I just I loved artichokes as a kid, and that they made me just so happy. That was my food.
I love it. Now, as a child, how did music become part of your life?
Oh, lots of ways. So one of my first memories about just music in general was I had a Fisher-Price plastic record player. I don't know if you may not be my age, but okay.
Yeah,
okay.
No, I totally. I feel like I had one and it had like a yellow circle on top of the ridges.
Yes, that was it.
Yeah.
So that I remember putting things on that. I don't remember exactly what I listened to, but I remember playing that. I remember just singing to myself all the time. And so on the weekends, my parents liked to sleep in, and they would ask me to stay in my room until the clock would say 8, and I would have to look at the number and learn how to read the clock. And what I would do in my room was play my Fisher-Price record player or just march around singing to myself. And I do remember marching around singing Doe a Deer from Sound of Music at the top of my lungs many times. And this is 2 or 3 years old, my brother was a baby and I had my room, and that was what I did. And then as I got older, I started taking instruments at school, and I started to really get into singing. And I mean, honestly, it felt really good when people told me that they liked the way I sang and would I sing for them. So I think it was, I think some people talk about how being acknowledged and appreciated is so close to love. I feel like that was something I was always looking for in making music, that it made me feel good when I made it. It made me feel like I could express myself. It felt physical and also full of feelings. And then people also acknowledged or appreciated me, and that made me feel loved at the same time. That was sort of a magical combination. So,
well, and that actually reminds me of something I think about all the time, which is whatever you feed grows. And you were fed on those really positive things. And I think we can do that with our kids. And also whatever we feed in their negative behavior can also grow. If we pay too much attention and too much emphasis on the things that aren't going well or the things we don't like, we're feeding that monster too. So it's what are we going to feed today with our kids?
Yeah, that's true. And when you said that, it made me think about also being conscious of ourselves as adults, knowing how we're feeding ourselves, because it's just part of how we react to our kids all the time, right? And it makes it easier to see when we are sort of blaming and pushing the negative and focusing on that more than is actually helping them.
Yeah. And somebody with regard to anxiety, like we were talking about, one of my friends is a sports psychologist, and the other day I saw on his Instagram feed a quote, and it was, if you're thinking too much about your fears, you're worshiping the wrong thing, or something along those lines. I'm messing up the quote, but basically we're putting all our emotion and focus in the wrong place if we're able to just shift it.
Yeah.
You know?
I think, right. That brings me back to something I think I said at the beginning, which I had a therapist once, and she always said, if you aren't having fun, you aren't doing it right. And that doesn't mean that fear isn't necessarily, might be part of that, actually. Like, I think my feeling a little anxious before a show, that's necessary for me to focus and to feel like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing right now. This is time for me to get right into being present. I'm about to give something and hopefully get something back from this audience. And it's important. You know, I feel like it sort of shows me that. And at the same time, I'm also going to go have fun, right? And the fear doesn't have to be the main part of it.
Yeah, the fun is the big piece.
Fun over fear.
Yeah, I love that. Fun over fear. We are going to make like a printable quote of that for people's refrigerators. Now, so what music could be as a little kid? It could be in high school. Like, what was that playlist for you?
When I was very little, lots of classic musicals. That's where like Sound of Music came in, and Mary Poppins. I was Julie Andrews. I just, wanted her to be my mother. And then later, I had a lot of influence just from what my parents had around. They had a lot of John Denver and Simon and Garfunkel and stuff. And then I kind of moved into my own listening to The Who and the Stones. And oh my God, I had a huge Olivia Newton-John phase when Grease came out. I think I basically was her biggest fan, joined her fan club for like 7 years.
I love it. Well, and I have to tell you, our first guest, Angela Santamero, who's also in New York, I need to set you guys up for lunch. She is the creator of the show Blue's Clues and Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. I feel like you guys should have a lunch date together. But part of her Ratatouille was listening to Grease on her record player, and it was that time. And the funny thing is, Grease, I showed that movie to my kids, and my son was probably in 6th grade. And we got to the end and he was so mad. And I was like, why did you hate it? He's like, why did she have to change to be with him? And I looked at him and I was like, I love you. And I'm ashamed that I have showed you this filthy movie. I just liked the music, but the message is horrible.
Oh, yeah. No, how many times is that going to keep happening? Things that we show our kids that like we thought were great, and then we watch them again or read them again or listen to them again and realize like, oh my God, the stereotyping, the limit. Oh, this is awful.
Yeah. Molly Ringwald, I'll put this in the show notes. She wrote, I think it was an op-ed in the New York Times about her reflections on The Breakfast Club and showing that movie to her daughter. It was so good.
Yeah.
That we'll put it in the show notes so everybody else can read it too, because it was amazing.
And I just saw her in Riverdale while my daughter sat me down on the couch and was like, you have to watch this show with me. Okay. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I am adding it to my list because I'm just behind the times, but I have been hearing about Riverdale and it needs to happen. Okay, now tell me what grown-up music is on your playlist.
It's so funny because actually right now I'm back around to musicals because I have a 13-year-old daughter.
Yes.
Who's into musicals. And so it's like all I hear is Hamilton and Dear Evan Hansen and Waitress, and which is great. I mean, I love all of them. And then that she's like finding these we just went to see Fun Home, and like that it wasn't even playing in Manhattan anymore. We like found a place in New Jersey to go and watch it. And so anyway, that's fun, and I hear a lot of that just because we're listening to music together a lot. But I'm a big Amy Mann fan, and also I really love slack key guitar from Hawaii. There's a guy named Dennis Kamakahi, and his music has been a real kind of background to my adult life for a long time. Those are some. And
I have heard of neither of them, and so they are also on my list of things
you have to check out Amy Mann. Yeah, and did you? If we are the same age, Till Tuesday was a '80s band.
Yes.
She was one of the lead singers in Till Tuesday, and then she could have broke off and became like a singer-songwriter extraordinaire, and she has some great songs.
Okay.
Very melancholy.
Which is great. I kind of like that, just like playing in the background while I'm cooking for some reason. I like a little mellow situation.
Do you know who I like to listen to in the background then is Jack Johnson.
Yes.
I just like everything he plays. I'm just like, this is so nice.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, his Curious George soundtrack is among my favorites of the things that he's done.
Oh, that's great.
It's so good. Well, now speaking of, I mean, that's a children's music soundtrack. So I want to talk about the music you make. And I feel like we need to start with a quick definition for our listeners. What exactly is kindie rock?
I don't know. I mean, it's not my favorite. I don't mean to be contrary, but I feel like when I started, that name didn't exist. So it's sort of something that's kind of developed over time because a lot of musicians who were originally, quote, adult art rock artists and maybe had kids or got excited about making music for kids for one reason or another because they felt like there wasn't enough good stuff out there, then turned their attention to that. And they're trying to make I think we're all trying to make music that touches the parents and the kids because that's who's listening, right? And and I mean, for myself, and this may be true for other people, I can only speak for myself, but when I first started writing music for kids, I was a preschool music teacher and I had to sing the same songs with multiple classes every week. For a while I had my own classes outside of the schools and the daycares that I taught in. And so I was teaching at the height, maybe 25 classes a week. So that's a lot of kids and a lot of repetition of the same songs. So if I had to sing songs that I found annoying to sing that many times, I was not going to like my job. So I think part of it is like, finding that with both the combination of the child within yourself and the adult musician that appreciates the child and putting them together so that both the adult can listen and the kids can listen and they're both really getting something out of it. And then as artists, we also can grow in our music. And I think that's a very long answer. That's what kindie is. That to me.
No, but I love it. And because there's a piece where you, as a parent, you're not tortured by what you're putting on the radio for your kids.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what
you're
the
happy
artists
to put it on.
Create. Yeah.
And here's where I'm going to give you my top 10, but it actually made a top 11 because I couldn't leave my last one off, of the essential Laurie Berkner. And you can tell me if I'm wrong. You can toss out a few others.
There's nothing wrong with you having choices. They're all right.
They are all right. So my number one is Buzz Buzz.
Oh, yay.
I feel like if there were a mosh pit type of a song for kids, it is this song. Like I could totally form a mosh pit. I mean, we all that song goes loud in our car. We rock out. Even now that my kids are a little older, nobody's sad when that song comes on. Everybody's pumped. It plays on every road trip we go on. So if anybody out there is going to download one thing, I say it should be Buzz Buzz. Now on iTunes or wherever they'd find it, would it just be Buzz or is it Buzz Buzz?
I think it's actually called Bumblebee and then in quotes, Buzz Buzz.
Okay. See, I needed you there. All right. So here are my other ones that I like. The Goldfish song. We Are the Dinosaurs. Rum Sum Sum. Fireflies All Through the Night. I Really Love to Dance. Monster Boogie. There's a Little Wheel Turning in My Heart, which is adorable. Victor Vito and the Ants Go Marching. That's just if I was going to build somebody a Laurie Berkner playlist. You've got so many songs. What is your very favorite song to sing? Do you have one or two that you're just pumped to play?
Yeah, I mean, one that I like playing My Family a lot just because I also love to see kids run in the audience, running and giving their parents a hug or waving to their parents or their family members when I sing that part. So that feels good. Also, I have that was something that one of the songs that I actually played for my dad when he was in the hospital before he passed away. So that has some strong feeling connections for me. I also have, speaking of the mosh pit songs, I have a song called Bubbles on Superhero that is like you have to bounce your head up and down to it to listen to it. And it's about taking a bath. And I actually really love playing that one as well.
You're listening to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher. We'll be back right after this.
It feels like there's never enough time to do it all. The kids keep growing, and sure, you keep taking photos of every little magical, maniacal moment. But then what? Get photos off your phone and into your hands with Chatbooks. Automatically create beautiful 60-page photo books in minutes, right from your camera roll and social media, starting at just $10 with free shipping. Keep calm and mom on with Chatbooks.
And now back to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher.
Well, are there any other favorite artists in this scene that you recommend to other people? A few others that I have on my playlist are like Justin Roberts and Ralph Covert. That they each have a couple songs that almost make me cry. They're adorable. But who else should people be checking out or listening to?
There are lots of great people. I'm going to feel bad about anyone that I don't mention right now, but I can't not talk about Brady Reimer, who's my bass player, but also has his own band, which of kids music, and he makes great stuff. And we used to listen to him when my daughter was younger than 13. Yeah. And another person I really like is Kira Willie, and she actually does mindfulness and yoga along with music. And then she writes Brilliant. Songs kind of thinking about those things. And some of her songs are specifically geared towards actually doing some yoga stuff. So she has a lot of really great songs. So those are the first two people that come to mind. There are so many. I'm just going to end it there and not
yes,
that's not perfect. Feel bad.
That's perfect. I won't force you into those bad feelings. And this next question may bring up some bad feelings. Life as a children's performer could be equal parts magic and mayhem if you're thinking about when you're performing. Do you have any horror stories?
Oh gosh, people ask me this a lot. This is also where you'll see that I'm not so good at remembering things, but
maybe you blocked it out.
Exactly. No, that's exactly what I've done. I mean, I remember doing a show once where I thought the kids were having a great time. But the patrons of the people who put on the show left with their kids because they didn't like that everybody got up out of their seats. So that was an issue. I remember one time that I was on stage. I don't know if this was a horror story, but when I sing "We Are the Dinosaurs" live, the part of the song that says we stop and take a rest, I lie down on stage and pretend to fall asleep. And there was kind of a mosh pit of people and kids down in front of the stage, and somehow a 2-year-old got onto the stage and was literally shaking me, trying to get me to wake up, and the parent couldn't get to the stage because of the other kids. And Susie actually had to come over and lift the child up and say, "Who does this belong to?" And then hand the kid back. And then I swear to God, that kid got back on the stage while I was still asleep. I mean, it was and I didn't even know half of it was happening because I had my eyes closed.
Because you were asleep. You were authentically asleep on stage.
Yep.
All right. So what about magical moments? Are there any moments that were just memorable and pure magic? I'm sure there's a lot.
Yeah. I think when I look out and I see what looks like a sea of people all sharing the same moment, maybe they're, especially it's very visible when I see them doing a movement together. If I'm singing "Walk Along the River" and everyone's sort of opening their arms at the same time, or just and it's parents and kids, it feels so good to see that and to see everyone engaged and smiling and feel I know what it's like to be at a show where I'm listening to music that I like and I'm happy because my kid is happy and we're all sharing this moment together. And then I remember that when I leave and I feel more connected to my child. That's what I feel like I see when that's happening in the room. And I think that I don't know, it just really fills me with a lot of pleasure and joy. And I feel like it reminds me how, oh, when I'm willing to share what I created, then other people are willing to share their joy with me. And like that is a great trade for me. That's a really
Yes.
nice relationship.
Yeah, it's magic. We even just ran an article in the last month or two on todaysmama.com about a little piece of research we saw that came out that said people who go to concerts actually live longer. And
I saw that too. I wasn't sure I believed it, but it was great.
I totally believe, because if you think of those moments,
yeah,
I think it's got to be, there's a health benefit to you being out in a crowd like that. Because even when you're in the crowd, right, and you're feeling that and you're participating like that, there's something in that for your soul. I hadn't been to a concert in forever, and I went to Coldplay a couple years ago, and they do such a good job. I wasn't even the biggest Coldplay fan, but it was such a good show. I think I cried.
Of course. That's great.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And I left feeling like it fed a part of me, and I had committed, oh my gosh, I need to start going to concerts again. I just had stopped kind of when you have kids and you have so much going on. I kind of left the concert scene of my college days. But I've started to go more, and there really is something there that is so good for you.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have made a joke like that. I think.
No, it's okay. I don't mean to chastise you.
No. I really, truly believe that live music, like the physical, energetic experience of the vibrations of live music in a room, surrounded by other people who are also either absorbing or making the music themselves because they're singing along, they're moving their bodies, like that. That experience, I feel like it is soul changing, and it's like it's physically changing and it's emotionally changing, and if it's a positive experience, I just think that is one of the reasons that I still think it's important to put on live shows. So I absolutely agree with you. I think it's fantastic to have people come and hear music live.
Well, and you're touring right now, so you're traveling all over. Tell me, do you have a stop in Salt Lake City planned? Because I will be there leading a mosh pit with all the little people when Buzz hits the scene.
That's so funny. I don't right now, but I was just saying, we were in Missouri a week or two ago, and I was saying to my sound guy, I was like, I want to get a map of the United States and see where I have not ever played, and just like make it a goal that in the next like 3 to 5 years, I 2 years, like I play all those places,
Yeah. Well, we make more babies here than like anybody, so we should really be a main stop.
I will definitely take that into consideration.
All right. And before we wrap, where are you going next? Where can people find you this summer?
I have shows in Illinois and New Jersey and Maryland, New Hampshire, New York, and then in the fall I'll be in California. So a lot of places. I wish there were more. In a way, it would be easier if there was more of me. Then I could actually go, play everywhere and also be able to be home with my family.
And what's life like on the road? Does your family ever travel with you?
So when Lucy was tiny, my husband Brian was in my band. So we all traveled together until she was about 18 months old. And then he went on to get his PhD, and now he's a therapist. And I kept playing, and Lucy, she comes now and then. It doesn't work as well now because everyone has a little bit of a different thing going on in their lives. She's great. She will come and do the merchandise. And I'll just throw one more story in there, which was when she was 4. I remember that I thought, oh, she's the perfect age. She can now come to the shows and just come to a show, right? This is what everyone's been telling me is like so great about being a kids musician and having a child. So I would bring her to the shows, and in the middle of the show, she would walk up to the stage and want to talk. And like, I couldn't just stop and start talking to her, or if I didn't sing about the animal she brought on her head for my Pig on Her Head song, where I look out into the audience and like I sing about animals that I see on kids' heads, if I couldn't see where she was or didn't see her animal, she was devastated, which I think happens to some kids, but I don't go home with them. And it was really very hard. And she used to tell me, I love your shows and I hate your shows. And she hated that I would meet kids afterwards and they would be on my lap and she wasn't. And, it's different now that she's a teenager, but there was a long time where that was actually pretty hard.
For sure. And now our teenagers are like, go ahead, take her. We don't want her anymore.
Right.
I make teenagers sound horrible. Actually, I'm super enjoying teenagehood. I will say that boys feel a little easier than girls. I think it's just like part of the deal that girls have to be like, over you. So far, she's only 13. But so far, yes.
Knock wood, she's still feeling pretty connected, which is really nice.
Well, tell me this. You mentioned your husband, and I'm so glad you did because I had a question that I was going to ask, and I just forgot as we kept going. So you mentioned he's a therapist. So here's where the pressure for me would be on in parenting. What kind of perspective and or pressure does him being a therapist bring to the parenting game at your house?
Oh, God, I hope not much. I mean, he works with adult children and families and couples, actually. So I think it's really great. Like he's thinking about those things. And we talk about them a lot. We've done so much therapy together over the years, like many, many, many years,
yes.
that it feels good. It feels supportive. And, he has his patients at work and they're not us, but I think he sometimes can be really a great person to have around to like notice things that I might not. And other times it can be like, all right, I'm not your patient.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you mentioned that you've been to therapy together because it's so good for marriages and families. And I think people don't often say, hey, we went to therapy and it was really helpful and productive, or it just doesn't come up in conversation. So I think the more people realize, hey, everybody's doing it. It's a good thing.
Yeah. We started couples therapy before we got married, actually. And part of it was to like see, did we feel like we wanted to be married? Because we had been together we were get together like 7 years before we got married. It took me a long time to say, okay. I was very scared.
It's a big deal. We dated for 2 years and I thought that was a long time. 7 is professional.
I'll take it.
But I also feel that that's pretty, I think that's pretty common on the East Coast where, I mean, I told you, I'm in Utah, I'm in the baby making capital of the world. 2 years was taking my time,
Well, good for you.
Yeah. I mean, I held out. Well, okay. We have taken so much of your time. Anything else you want our listeners to know before we part and I become one of your roadies and follow you around the country?
What we didn't talk about, I'll just throw out there, is that some of those songs that you, like We Are the Dinosaurs that you mentioned, have become picture books. And so that's been really exciting and fun. And I know We Are the Dinosaurs is also available in Costco as a big board book as well. Monster Boogie and Pillowland are also both picture books. And Pillowland, I mean, Monster Boogie and We Are the Dinosaurs, I love them. And Ben Clanton did the illustrations and they're super awesome, very, very fun. Pillowland is a very artistically gorgeous. It was with a different illustrator. And she did just these beautiful cut paper collage things that I was blown away by. So I felt really lucky to be able to see my songs turned into these beautiful books. So I'd love to share.
So perfect. And I hope you do even more of them, because if you've got 200 songs, I mean,
I have a lot.
You've got a long publishing life ahead of you.
Yes, I got to go back and count my songs. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to check.
I know. Maybe we should like start a betting pool. I don't know. Just $1 a piece. I don't know.
That'd be cool. Or just jelly beans.
Jelly beans. It could be jelly beans. And I'll make sure that in our show notes, we put links to those books because people should definitely check them out. I actually have seen some of the cover art for those and they are so fun.
Great. Thank you.
Well, it's on my bucket list to be there live at one of your shows one day for my tiny mosh pit.
Yay.
This has been the funnest interview. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. It was totally a pleasure.
I'm going to ask you one more thing. If people want to find you online, where should they be following you to keep up with everything?
Well, website is just laurieberkner.com, but I'm on most main social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. Those are kind of our big four.
Sounds good. We'll catch up with you more on the internet.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Remember to head over to todaysmama.com/podcast for show notes, past episodes, and to subscribe. Of course, we've posted some features from this episode too. We've turned some of our sage wisdom into graphic quotes. We've posted playlists, some insider tips from Laurie if you're planning on visiting Manhattan with your kids. And of course, we've got giveaways. And hey, if you missed our first episode, you can get that too. And see you next time.
You've been listening to the Today's Mama podcast with Rachel Hersher. To find out more, go to todaysmama.com. That's today's, MAMA.com. Today's Mama, connecting moms and families with the best of today.